But Maria, I wasn't so afraid in the starting because it was said on the news that the following it that it was just a category 3. And towards the end, maybe about 40 minutes towards it reaching Dominica, it came to I think to a 5. It went to a 5. That's what that took me off guard.
Hurricane Maria continues to strengthen. Top sustained winds now up to 125 miles an hour.
Hurricane Maria has intensified into a Category 5 storm as it begins its rampage through the eastern Caribbean islands. Dominica has been one of the first to feel it.
Hurricane Maria may be a Category 4 storm now, but it hit the island of Dominica as a Category 5.
It's the first time in recorded history a hurricane that strong makes landfall on the island.
I can recall that Monday morning on September the 18th when I had the last opportunity to be on air to speak before Maria hit. My words were to brace for a catastrophic impact. Some had even taken me to task for such a pronouncement. But as we say, the rest is history.
As I walked along the streets and the roads, the highways and so on, and you look at the destruction, every home destroyed, people are literally homeless, people are despondent, they appear to be, they have lost hope and confidence and faith that they can rebuild their homes and this country can be rebuilt. So as I went along, I had to give people the assurance that things will be okay. Once we have life, I told them, once we have life, we'll rebuild our country. And so we thank God for being alive.
From the standpoint of the shelters themselves, I mean, a number of them were either damaged or completely destroyed. We moved from pre-Maria and into Maria of 145 shelters. In 2018, down to about 80 shelters. So we had seen a reduction in the shelters. And I need to say that the shelters we had really basically were schools and community centers and churches. And none of these shelters was specific to hurricanes. They were not purposefully built for hurricanes and hazards of that nature.
So the hurricane was, I believe, on Monday, and I decided to travel to the United Nations to address the world because we had to create a platform to communicate to the world what was the real situation confronting Dominica. And luckily at the time, the General Assembly was still in session.
Secretary General to the United Nations, I come to you straight from the front line of the war on climate change.
In the preparation of the speech, the idea came about that we need to build greater resilience. And the idea came about to build a resilient nation, to do things differently, more costly, but differently to ensure that we can better withstand natural disaster.
Through the EU, the government of Dominica embarked on building regional shelters, and so the Ministry of Public Works was involved in providing technical input via review of the designs and advice on the designs.
These hurricane shelters are largely built with grant funding by the European Union. And the European Union has been a very good partner with the Commonwealth of Dominica for many, many years. And particularly after Hurricane Maria and the devastation that we suffered, the European Union was one of the entities that reached out to Dominica to provide support to Dominica, as they have been doing in the past. And they very generously agreed to fund 2 regional shelters in Jimmet and Casa Bruce in particular.
Having these structures as resilient means that they have the support of a lot of alternative systems. They have sufficient water supply, meaning they have their own cisterns. They have the alternate energy system. So whether it be solar and other means. So in a situation, hurricane situation, where we are on a backup system, then they can have some electrical supply.
Resiliency defined will be the ability of a structure to absorb forces or energy or some sort of that type being brought onto it and being able to bounce back and to be able to operate after that emergency. So after being hit with whatever it is going to be, being able to rebound and to be adaptive and to continue providing support and shelter. For these buildings to be considered resilient would be starting with their structure and how they are built from the foundation up. The foundation of the structures are an entire concrete structure. It is built using our tunnel form system, our system called FORSA, which means the entire structure is built out of concrete and rebar and steel. It is built monolithic in the sense that it's poured walls and slab at the same time. So there is no joints per se between the slab and the wall except for the sections we do. So the whole entire structure is monolithic and it's built out of concrete, which in itself gives it resiliency. There is no block walls, there is no hollow clay blocks, so it's a thick 6-inch concrete wall you have between yourself and the environment.
So we're thinking that this shelter one will address the level of despondency that can be among people after a storm. You do have to be destitute because you go to a place and you have got to worry about next day your house is down and you cannot go back home. Because for me, when people not at home, what you want is to at least be comfortable. The pain I see people went through at the shelter after the hurricane, I think if we have another disaster, a lot of that would be addressed.
Casa Bruce area is surrounded by a number of vulnerable communities. You have Good Hope, San Sofia, Petit Sofia, and the Kainago territory. Very vulnerable communities. So that is why the decision was taken to have a regional shelter in one of those areas. And because Casa Bruce is like the hub for those various localities, it was felt that Casa Bruce would have been the best area. You have areas like Campbell. Campbell had to be relocated after Petit Savan when Erica actually struck. But then Maria came shortly thereafter. So that when that happened, it means that from a national standpoint, you had a serious housing issue. So that is why we felt that to look at the shelter, the emergency shelter in Jimmet. So you have a very broad cross section of the country in terms of the population centers.
Soon after Maria, as soon as communication was restored, Ambassador Chamachere and her services reached out to us, asking what does Dominica really need, because they themselves had been traumatized by the news of Hurricane Maria. A week after Maria, on behalf of the government of Dominica, we formally wrote to the European Union asking for support. The EU clearly indicated upfront that they were willing and able to provide us with support, financial support. This decision was taken very early by the government of Dominica and supported by the European Union to have regional emergency shelters built. because you would have clearly understand the need for housing. Housing has impacted severely by Hurricane Maria. I always stress the grant resources provided by the European Union. Imagine taxpayers in the countries of the European Union providing funding for our development. Really and truly, people don't really understand that. But we really have to be thankful to the European Union. And as I said, they are always willing. They have been our development partner for many, many, many years. And they've continually supported us.
And certainly it is my desire as the Prime Minister to have the European Union name associated for posterity to this facility. So they'll be very well be named. And of course, we'll confer them. But people need to be reminded that the European Union have been partners for us, and they have been so gracious and to us in working with us to get these facilities and many other aspects of our economic and social advancement. I am very grateful for that on behalf of the government and people of Dominica, and we express our heartfelt gratitude to the European Union and all the countries that make up the European Union and the citizens of the European Union.
Well, as the shelter manager of Petite Soufriere, and then I had 21 people under my care. I had elderlies, I had middle-aged, I had children, and then I had blind people too as well. When it was about 1 o'clock in the morning, that's the time the wind said, well, over it, I am putting my powers now. This door next behind your back, the wind took it. This door on the other, next behind you, the wind took it. The roof was a galvanized roof. The wind took it. The partition, the wind took it. The ceiling, the wind took it. These toilets took the roof, it was galvanized, took the roof. In Castle-Bruce, I think this is a good thing. If a hurricane like Maria, God forbid, to hit Dominica, I think, well, we are safer now.
At one point, we had to use our mattresses for barriers from the raging wind and rain and leaves because of the way the shelter is set up. It's a school, so they have the holes in the walls, and we had to battle with that all through the night. And that was our biggest challenge. And then we had children and women, screaming, and it was just tough. It was real tough. That project the government is undertaking is a wonderful project. I think the shelters are the best thing that is happening right now in terms of disaster management. Yeah, I think the shelter is going to go a long way with the way they are being built to accommodate people, and with kitchens and bathrooms and all these things. I think is the best direction to go right now.
It put me a lot of challenge, I would say, because I'm an amputee, and it was difficult for me to move around how I wanted. But however, I coped. Well, in Mangatha Maria, a lot of people came to visit me because I am well known, you know. My friends took me to this vehicle to the hurricane shelter that was Castle-Bruce Secondary School. They put me upstairs, but they were flooded. The water was so high in the school, in the classroom, that I asked them to relocate me. So I'd like to say to the government of the Dominican European Union, thank you very much for such initiative putting this shelter in my community, Castle-Bruce. I am very, very grateful. I'm talking on behalf of myself and many others.